Graham Linehan's threat of not returning to Britain and his apparent ignoring of the bail conditions not to be using Twitter exposes the reach of British law and the absurdity of the online the online safety law. And he's always written in stark contrast. Now he is living in one. After 3 decades in Britain, the Father Ted, an IT crowd writer, says he may never return, claiming the police are working in tandem with trans activists and that free speech has collapsed in the UK. He is setting up in Arizona and talking with theatrical flourish about becoming a free speech refugee. On September the 1st, Linehan landed in Heathrow and was met by 5 armed Metropolitan Police officers. God knows why they were armed. It was unnecessary. He was arrested on suspicion of inciting violence over 3 posts on Twitter in April, including the line that if a trans-identified male is in a female-only space and will not leave, punch him in the balls. He was questioned briefly, taken to hospital for high blood pressure and bailed pending further investigation. The Met insists it polices without fear or favour, and these are the uncontested facts that ignited a national row. Layered on top is a separate chaos of another case. Linehan is on trial at Westminster Magistrates Court, accused of harassing the teenager Sophia Brooks and of damaging a phone during a confrontation last October. He pleads not guilty. Reports indicate the hearing has been adjourned to the 29th of October. Whatever one's views, there are 2 tracks here: a policing decision about 3 social posts and a live criminal case with evidence and cross-examination. One needs to keep them distinct. Politically, the arrest detonated exactly the debate you would expect. Sir Mark Rowley has urged ministers to change the law so officers are not dragged into toxic culture war speech cases unless there is a clear real-world threat. Ministers have echoed the sentiment that police should focus on burglary, knife crime and violence against women, and that is a serious institutional signal. The country's most senior officer is telling Parliament that framework is muddled and needs fixing. In other words, the online safety law, as drafted by a series of particularly stupid Home Office ministers going back to Nadine Dorries and currently Lisa Nandy, doesn't work. It doesn't work. It didn't work at the beginning when Nadine Dorries couldn't tell what is not an acronym, it's a thing, and what an algorithm was. And Nadine Dorries has produced something that arrests one of our most senior writers, who produced one of the best television sitcoms ever. Linehan's narrative of exile then gathers pace. He tells the Times that Britain is now impossible for him, that former friends were silent when he needed them, that the police had been captured by activists. He revels in the symbolism of being arrested on the Jet Bridge. This is performance as well as protest, designed to force a binary choice on the audience. Either he is an offender being rightly checked, or a canary in the mine of British liberty. Across the Atlantic, the story has become a talking point for US conservatives. There are claims that Rob Schneider and Andrew Doyle are building a studio vehicle with Linehan in Arizona, and that lawyer Aaron Siri is exploring an asylum route. Schneider has publicly boasted their collaboration, and sympathetic outlets are pushing the free speech refugee frame. Whether asylum is even a realistic legal pathway is another matter. Asylum requires persecution, not simply controversial speech in a democratic state, and no one has identified a coherent visa route yet. So, treat the asylum talk as politics first, law second. And where precisely is the public interest? Start with the idea that triggered the arrest, perhaps. It's not a nuanced political essay. It advocates a punch. The question is not whether you or I like the sentiment. The question is whether it crosses the legal threshold from ugly opinion into incitement. And UK law regulates threatening or abusive communications when they're likely to encourage violence against a protected group or person. Reasonable people can disagree about what and where the threshold lies. Reasonable police officers need a statute that lets them exercise judgment with confidence. And that's exactly the gap that Rowley is pointing at. And exactly the gap, I would suggest, that Linehan has fallen into. So next, we need to make sure that we don't inflate the arrest into a general gag on criticism of gender policy. Many gender-critical voices speak robustly every day without being arrested. The specific element here is the call to physical violence. If you argue that this is obviously hyperbole, you still face the practical problem. Platforms strip context, audiences fragment, and the police receive complaints. In that environment, precision in drafting and restraint in policing matter more, not less. And what about the broader chill? 2 signals are worrying and 2 are reassuring. Worrying? The police did the most conspicuous thing possible by arresting a famous critic at the gate and then imposed a no Twitter condition that was quickly challenged. Reassuring, senior ministers and the Met Commissioner immediately called for the statutory balance to be revisited. That is how a liberal system should correct itself. Where does this leave Linehan's no return threat? As rhetoric? Well, it works. As strategy, it trades the British courts for an American media ecosystem where his case is a proxy for a larger fight about Europe's online speech rules. As law, his best hope is not American asylum, but British clarity, tighter guidance on what merits arrest and charging, and a firm floor under speech that is rude, even cruel, but not a real-world threat. So, here are 3 closing points. First of all, keep the lanes separate. The Heathrow arrest is about 3 April posts and a threshold test on incitement. The Westminster trial is about alleged harassment and criminal damage. We mustn't collapse the 2 together. We must insist on dates, not vibes. The arrest was on the 1st of September 2025. The trial opened on the 4th of September and, as per reports, resumes on the 29th of October. If those dates slip, we need to update the argument. Precision is a civic duty in culture war stories. And thirdly, we need to demand that Parliament does its job. If the Commissioner says the law is forcing officers into Twitter spats, then change the law. Police need to be protected, and so they can deal with serious crime, not frivolity. We need to protect free citizens, free subjects from arrest for hot-headed lines that will never translate into real-world violence. And if a line does include violence, it needs to be prosecuted with care and open justification. Linehan, meanwhile, can choose Arizona. Britain should choose better speech law. That is the grown-up way to answer a writer's parting shot. But we should also express regret that Linehan feels it necessary to say that he will not return to this country, and we are losing a great asset.